I'm going to show you how to configure backplane stacking using the UI in Aruba Central. So just to start off, I'll give you a little high-level overview. I have two 3810 24-port SFP Plus switches. That's going to be my core. So I'm going to stack them together. It's going to be my core switch. And then I'm going to have two 2930M switches, the 48 port with the 8 smart rate. Those are going to be my access switches. So, important thing to note, when you plan on stacking these in Aruba Central, do not plug the stacking modules in the back at this time. If you plug the stacking modules in, it will turn on stacking automatically, and then it will not work in Aruba Central. So if you already plugged in your stacking modules, make sure you go out and erase your startup config, and also go in, pop those modules back out, do the command show stacking to make sure that stacking isn't on. If it thinks that stacking is still on even though you pop the module out, make sure you do the command stacking factory reset. So clear those switches off completely. Make sure they're fresh out of the box, 100% factory. And that's where we're going to start. So I already added the subscriptions. So I went into my home and I added the subscriptions already to these switches. So I'll just click on here to show you where it is, just in case. So the switches won't even come into Aruba Central unless if you add the subscriptions. So I already added them. Really, that's all I did though. So now let's go back to our network operations. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to stack my 3810 switches. So right now I'm not sure which one is my top switch. I do know the serial number, but what you could do is if you were having somebody configure this, if you were configuring it remotely and somebody was just plugging the equipment in for you out at a remote branch, what you could do is just tell them to plug in the top 3810 if you want the top one to be the commander. Most people do. They'll make the top one the commander, the second one down, this, just so they know which is which switch that they're configuring. So let me click on this. I know the serial number. Yes, so this is my top switch. This is my commander. So you can see now that I clicked on it, you can see that the focus is on just this switch. So now I'll go to device. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this a name. I'll give this will carry over to the stack once the stack is formed. So I'll say 3810 core stack. So it doesn't want it to start with a number, so that's fine. So let me cancel that again. So I'll go in and I'll name this switch. And I'm going to call it Aruba 3810. I'm going to call it core stack. I'll just call it core. We'll click OK. And then we'll click save. So now my switch's name has changed. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into stacks. And I'm going to click on the plus sign. And only your switch, only the switch that you're working on will show up in here. So both of my 3810s are in Aruba Central, but since I am working up here on just this switch, that's the only option I have. So I'll select that, and I do want that to be my commander anyway. But it's warning you, and it's saying, before you click save and reboot stack, insert the stacking module. So I'll quickly pause this video, and I'll insert the stacking module into the switch. Okay, so I have the stacking module in the switch, and it says save and reboot. And it tells you it takes about 5 minutes, so I'll click OK. You can see here that it says pending. So the switch is rebooting as soon as we clicked on that save and reboot. When the switch comes back up, it will then say active once it checks back in with Aruba Central. And you'll see that the switch will also show up down here. It will show up with a priority at 255, which is the highest, so that means that it's the commander. You'll see that the role says commander, and the status should be active. So we're going to pause for 5 minutes and wait for the switch to come back. Okay, I just refreshed, and it is now active. So the switch rebooted, came back up, and you can see the type is BPS or backplane stacking. You can see it's the only member. It's chain, and it's saying active. Now, if you look down here, as I said earlier, the priority is 255, and its role is commander, and it is active. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to add in the members. So I only have 2 switches in this stack. You could add up to 10. This is a 3810 stack, so you could add up to 10 switches, but I only have 2. So when I click on the plus sign, you can see it's going to make member 2, and the priority is going to be a little bit lower, 254. Now, it's asking me for the model to switch, and it's saying same as commander, which it is. They're the exact same switches. So I'll just leave it as same as commander and hit save. Now, if I wanted to select the model, I could go in here and select another 3810 model, and I could then save that. But I'll click save it, same as commander, and I'm going to click save. And so right now it's inactive because we did not add the second switch in, and we don't have any stacking modules or anything. But so we're ready to now work on the second switch. There is something that I've wanted to take a minute to explain. So we're about to add in this second link, right? So we configured the stacking on the top switch, but not on the bottom. Once we go to configure this, it's going to ask me to put in the module again and connect the cables and then hit save and reboot. So we're still okay at this point, but when we go over to do the stacking on this side, if we add in the stacking, we're going to make a big old loop, unless if we configure these as trunk ports, right? If we put ports 1/2 and 2/2, those are my uplinks. We have to put those in a trunk group, and we have to put these also in a trunk group, or we're going to cause a loop in the network. So let's work on the second switch. We're not going to cause a loop yet, but I just wanted to kind of point that out, and we'll do some of the configuration to make sure that we don't cause a loop. So I'm going to click here, and so we're not concentrating on the top switch anymore. And now I'm going to configure my second 3810 switch. Now we're going to get on our second 3810. This will be the second one in the stack. So I'll click on it and then go to device, and I go to stacks. Now this was a little confusing to me at first because you click on the plus sign to make a stack and it says select commander switch. Now the commander is the first switch. So I was a little bit confused by that. Because I was like, well, the other one is the commander. I shouldn't make this the commander. But really all this does is turn on stacking. So it tells me to put the module in before I click save and reboot. So I am going to quick pause and go out and put the module in and cable it up. And then I will reboot the switch. So I'm going to quick pause. Okay, I plugged in the module. So now save and reboot. It's going to tell me it takes 5 minutes. We'll say OK, and we'll wait for that switch to come back. Okay, so now my stack is up. You'll see if you go in the devices. So let me click off here. There's only 3 switches. When the second 3810 joins the switch, it goes away out of this inventory because it's now part of the stack. So if I click on the 3810, which is now the stack, and then I go to device, and then I go back to stacking, I can see that my top switch is my commander and it's active, and my second switch in the stack has the priority at 254 and it's standby and it's active. If it's not working and it doesn't join, it will not say active. So right here, I feel confident that my switch is stacked together. So what I want to do is I want to configure a trunk group. So when the 3810 switches join, that we already have them trunked. So I'm going to go to trunk 1 and I'm going to select my ports. So ports 1, 2. So let me kind of pull up my diagram. So ports 1, 2, and 2, 2 are going to be in my trunk group together. Oops. So let me scroll down the 2, and it's port 2. I don't want that one, so we'll get rid of it. So this is my trunk group. Now if I was having different VLANs tagged across it and things like that, I could put it on there. So there we go. There is my trunk group going out. And now we can configure the second stack. So let's go to devices, or I can click on the X here and I can now select my switches. So let's take a look at which switch is my top switch. So I know my switch with the serial number ending in P08C is my top switch, and I want that to be my commander. So I'm going to click on device. I'm going to go to stack now. Let's give this let's change a name on it. So now I'll go to stacks. I'm going to click on stack. I'm going to select the switch itself as the commander. And again, it says before you click save and reboot, plug in the module. So I'm going to go plug in the module. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have the module plugged in. I'm going to click save and reboot stack. And in 5 minutes, it should be back up, and it should change from pending to active. So I'm going to pause for 5 minutes. So one thing I will point out while we're waiting for the commander to come back online is this note here. You can only add members to the stack when the commander is active. So since it's not back online and not active, I can't click on this plus sign. So we'll wait. Should be up in another minute. Okay, now that this 2930M is active, I need to add in the second switch. And then we'll click off this switch and we will go to our other switch in the stack. So now I'm going to take my last 2930M switch. This is going to be my second switch in the stack. Now, it's a little confusing because you're telling it it's a commander. You think that the commander is the top switch, but here you're just really actually enabling stacking. So it says save and reboot and put the stack module in. So we'll click OK. I'll pause it. We should come back and it should be all stacked. So one thing I want to do before I unstack this is ports 1A1 and 2A1 should be in a trunk group. We already set the trunk group on the 3810. So the other switch should reboot, but I'm not going to connect them together yet because I don't want any loops in the network. So let me go to my 2930M. Let's go to my interfaces. And let's make a trunk group. So click on the plus sign. We'll just call it trunk 1. And the ports are the fiber ports in the back. So they're not showing up yet. So I'm worried that the switch may have to connect first for those ports to come up. So what I'm going to do, so I don't cause a loop in the network, is before I plug everything back in, I'm going to kill one of my second links on my 3810 core. So if we look at my drawing here, let's pull that back up again. So I'm going to kill, I'll kill port 22. So when I plug everything in, we don't form a loop. So let's go, I'm on the 3810 core. Let's go to interface 2/2. Let's edit it. And let's tell it admin state down until we can let the switch come up, see all the ports, build the trunk group, then we'll re-enable that port. So let me pause it for a second and plug in the cables. So let's go back, look at our 2930Ms and see if they're stacked now. So it's showing active, everything looks good. So we have a stack on both. Let's see if we can configure our interfaces now. All the interfaces weren't showing up before. So let's do a trunk group. So trunk 1. Okay, so the fiber ports are showing up in the back. So A1. So you see that the switch had to check in once it formed a stack to be able to see all the ports. So that's why I had to shut down one of the ports on the on the 3810. Because I could not form this trunk until it saw all those ports. So there we go. Now that I saved those settings, now we have the trunk here. And now we can go back on the 3810 and now I can up that port. Because we'll just check real quick, but make sure I have a trunk group here, which I do. So we should be able to now up this port. So if we just go to ports, and see it's down and it's in trunk group. So let's just enable this port. All right, so that's what we have to do to configure. Let me pull this up here. Is to configure. Now we have a stack in here, but these ports are lagged together. So it's acting as one port. So now our stack is fully configured.